Hello, everyone. Happy New Year, and welcome back to another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast. We are, just a couple of days into 2025. We've tried to sit down a couple of times, but haven't managed to do that with holidays and all that. So we thought with this episode, we're just going to do like a mini mid-season review. It's technically not mid-season. It's kind of hard to work out where mid-season is, but it's pre-winter. It's like we're in the kind of winter break era. So we're just going to go through the teams, kind of have a look at how we think their seasons have gone so far, potential kind of transfer needs with the window opening on the 7th in Belgium and all that sort of stuff. And hopefully by the time it goes out, nothing major will have happened that we've missed, and this is all very current and up to date. But yeah, as always, I'm joined by Joris and Scott. We managed to get the three of us together for this one, which seems to be a little bit of a bonus this year, guys. But hope you're well. Hope you had a nice little time off, and hope you're raring to go again.
You too. Hello, guys. Hope everybody at home's well. Had a lovely festive period. It's what do we call this? It's a kind of mid-season report card episode, something like that.
Well, and technically, for most of the sites, we have to had 20 games and 20 to go. So we'll see what that goes. But unfortunately, I had the genius idea to ask the listeners to guess whether this was recorded before or after New Year. But that plan has fallen through to some other words from other guys here already. So I still needed to quack on about it now, though. But well, here we go. That's happy 2025, everyone.
Sorry for ruining your plans. Yeah, I hope everyone that's listening as well. Hope if you managed to, if you're of that persuasion, you managed to have a couple of the old Belgian beers as well while you were off. I'm sure, yeah. They always go down a treat at Christmas, especially the Christmas special beers. They're always quite nice. Let's crack on then, shall we, guys? Let's start with obviously league leaders Genk, ahead of Club Brugge by 1 point, 13 games won, drawn 3, lost 4. Obviously, Torsten Fink coming in the summer, new manager, young-ish squad, but still a couple of remaining guys. Obviously, Joris, we're going to go to you for Genk to start with. How do you think their season's been so far? And do you think they need to do anything in January? Is there any kind of areas you're slightly concerned about that you think need fixing, or potential players that you think might leave that you're kind of a bit concerned about as well?
Season, well, obviously, it has been great so far. Can't complain about almost anything, I suppose. Needs for this transfer window a left back. Not because Kayembe is having a good season, but he's also the only option there is. So they need some depth in there. That's the point. Potentially, maybe even like it is still not the strongest part of the squad either. So potentially, even really someone who can play him out of the side. And so far it's been okayish, but I'm also seeing a potential goalkeeper issue with the weird situation with the first two goalkeepers there. But I don't think anything is gonna change in that lineup or if so, it's more likely that Penders maybe gets a loan and then someone else comes in as second goalkeeper. But I'm not sure if Van Komberg will be replaced, given he got a contract extension as well, of course. Departures, hopefully none. That Penders transfer hopefully has given Genk the room to say no to a lot of offers that might come in. I would not have dreamt to have to say like I hope Dodo doesn't leave this winter. In summer I would have had a completely opposite opinion still, so I have to hold my hands up high there, and I hope he can keep up his form as well. But yeah, it's just been a really great season so far. In the end, okay, the lead shrunk a bit, but that's all right. They still managed to get through the difficult December month. Not completely unscathed, but still on a positive note. Like after the game against the Brugge only 2 games ago, going into winter, that would have been a way worse point than now. Even though, unfortunately, in the last game now they didn't manage to get a win against Antwerp, but the performance level was really high, and they actually always should have won that game. But to not go that deep into that, but like they had plenty of chances, and the potential goalkeeper issue showed there a little bit as well. But so far 9 home wins, also in a row now, which is a club record. Still unbeaten at home as well. They only drew the first game against Standard of all teams, and also drew against Standard, I guess, in the cup, technically after 90 minutes. So the away form is my concern a little bit in the sense of points haul, but so far smooth sailing, and we'll see what the rest of the season brings. And really did not expect to be in this position before the season. Definitely overperforming, and let's see where the ship strands at the end of the season. Even though I don't think that's a saying in English, but judging by the looks on your faces, but where it all will lead to at the end of the season. I don't think they're title favorites despite the number one position at the moment, but I just didn't expect them that high up anyway, at any point in the season. And the levels of football generally have been well. There was a dip, but hopefully that's already past us now.
I think coming into this season, I think one of the big questions for me was how we're Genk going to do under Torsten Fink. I was quite excited about him making that move because it made a lot of sense. I thought there was a lot of ingredients kind of coming together there that I thought could have been quite good. And at the moment, we do have a title race. Joris is right. I think they're probably ahead of schedule. Fink has kind of acknowledged that over the last couple of weeks. You know, he's pretty pleased with most things. I think he'll be very keen not to rock the boat too much. So I wouldn't expect very much business from a Genk perspective unless it's, a couple maybe going out. Joris's point about Kayembe is an important one, I think. I think it'd be useful to have a little bit more depth there as well. The goalkeeping issue, there's certainly some longer term question marks there, but they probably don't need to do anything about that actively until the summer, and I'm sure they're aware of that. But yeah, I mean, at the moment things are looking very good for them, and importantly, they've responded really well. That game in early December that we were all looking forward to against Club, just to kind of get a barometer of where both these sides are, because they by far have been the best sides, and I still think, and I remember saying this to you, Ben, maybe about a month ago, that probably Genk and Club were the only two sides that had the depth and quality really to go the distance, and it was going to be between those two in all seriousness. I still think that. But yeah, things looking good for them. They've played a lot of good football, offensively very good. They, I suppose, just know that they need to hang in there and kind of maintain this momentum if they can, because we know, as everyone else will do, of course, that it's really about the playoffs and how you handle them and how they respond to the fixtures against the big boys when it gets to that stage. But yeah, I mean, I'd be giving them an A- at this stage if I had to.
Nice little A-. I'd probably give them an A+. I think, like you said, I'm pretty impressed with how well they've done so far this season compared to like what we thought they would do. But also, I remember saying at the beginning of the season, I thought without the European football, Fink would be able to do some stuff with it. And the problem with saying that you're ahead of schedule is that next season, if you struggle, like you're going to be under a lot of pressure, and you can't then just say, "Oh no, but we're ahead of schedule." It's like no, the expectations are there, and yeah, there's a couple of managers who are struggling with the expectations that we will probably get to. Let's move on to Club, obviously just behind them by a point, which is pretty ominous. I think I've said it a couple of weeks ago. At this stage of the season, usually they're a bit further away and about to go on their ridiculous run. You could just say, like, at the moment, like, started really slowly, but then Champions League football's been really, really positive. Like, positive performances, even with some of the results that didn't go their way, they've played really well. The summer signings have actually been pretty good. How many times have we seen a couple of the summer signings come in for Club and actually not be any good at all? And we're talking about them needing a striker in January or this and that in January. So interested to hear, kind of, Scott, what you think about their season so far and kind of window needs, because I was looking at them and I was like, I don't really think they need anything unless someone like an Ordonez or someone leaves. I feel like they seem pretty fine.
Yeah, it's been a slow and impressive burn. I think that's how I would describe the first half of the season for them. They did start slowly, and all of the old questions, or the big old questions that we've been probably asking for about 3 years around them, kind of have raised their head kind of a couple of times. But there's a feeling now that, I think this squad generally is really happy playing under Nicky Hine. I think he comes in at the end of last season for the playoffs. They do very well. They have a great playoffs, win the title, of course. He gets the job on a permanent basis, and you're wondering, how's that going to affect the overall dynamic? And I think they have responded very well to him. I think the squad respects him, actually. I saw a few things, and this will be my first mention this week of anything to do with body language. Regular listeners will know that I'm quite into that with my football. You can tell an awful lot from that, and I saw when I was at Celtic against Club in the Champions League a few weeks ago now. I was watching the training session in the evening at Celtic Park, and I could see that there was a lot of intent listening to what he was saying, and just a general feeling that they like playing under Hine. I think they've got stronger, I think, as the season has progressed, and look comfortable at the moment, particularly offensively. When they turn up, it's very difficult for anyone to kind of lay too much of a glove on them. Even Genk struggled when they went to the Unbridled earlier in early December. Could have just been an off day from a Genk perspective. We will find out. But yeah, when they're clicking, it's difficult to kind of get too close to them. I, like you, Ben, I don't see much movement, but I think I think they could do with a little bit of competition in that squad still. I think there's a few people there who are still a little bit too comfortable with their starting position, and I'm not saying that's a problem, because at the moment there's no indication of that. But just from a coaching perspective, I think you need that. I think from a striking perspective, there's a lot of people pitching in at the moment, which is good. You want that, but it's a bit disappointing, I think, looking at it from the outside, that they've not been able to produce a striker for a while, frankly, who has been able to carry a meaningful load for them. So thankfully the load has been spread, and as it should. I mean, there's so much offensive talent in that squad, and has been for a while now, that you wouldn't want to rely on that. Having said that, the squad is looking quite strong, and I don't think they'll want to disturb it. It's much the same as Genk, and it's performing as well as it is. Then I would be tempted to kind of keep it locked down. I think some might go out on loan. I think there might be some surprising requests as well, and asks. There's a question mark over Kyrian Saba as well, whether he might leave permanently, let alone on loan. I suspect there'll be quite a lot of interest in him as well. That kind of raised a few eyebrows a week or so ago when it became public knowledge that that was very much a possibility. But if they can stay clear of injuries, then I think they're going to push Genk very, very hard, or push each other very, very hard, I would say.
Yeah. I do think they are still the clear favorites as well. Or again, maybe it might have at a recent earlier stage in the season might have been a different look, but at the moment, I do think they actually. So for Genk, to quickly come back to that, I think a deciding factor to go for the title is whether they actually get another goalkeeper, first goalkeeper, and really to get pushed for the title. For Club Brugge, despite his stats, I am looking at the striking position. Honestly, like Gustav Nilsson has 4 goals and 5 assists in 12 games or so, so that's arguably really well. But I'm not sure if he's the striker for that. That really makes them better, nonetheless. And that's the bit of the issue. Like, also, of course, we know him. He's always scoring the ugly goals sometimes and so on. That's why he's there. But I'm not sure if that's enough for Club Brugge. Obviously, yes, that might be compensated. So far, it has been by other players as well pitching in, and of course, in a well-scoring side, he will score his goals as well. But not only that. So there's Nilsson, then there's Jude Gla, who's probably, I would suspect, going out. Also, like, he's not been performing really well in the past year or so, maybe even more by now. Shown only some glimpses from what he, well, after his stormy start. And there's Vermont, where he might be a little bit too lightweight. There was a question mark there for me, like in striking position still, despite all their strengths and obviously already being the most scoring side in the league. So maybe it's not a complete deciding factor, but I could see them maybe not winning a title because of not doing anything about that. Let's maybe put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think my feelings on Gustav Nilsson were made very clear at the beginning of the season. I'm kind of with you, Yoris. I haven't really changed my mind, but I have kind of just decided that they just don't seem to need it. Like, if he can score 10 goals and Van Acken's going to score 10, Solis, he's going to score 10 this season quite comfortably. He's already on 9. Scott Olsen, if he wants to, could probably score 15, but that's if he wants to. It's kind of up to him. So, yeah, it'll be. I'm interested to see if they do anything, but again, I feel like they could probably win. They can win the league with Nielsen, but if they have ambitions for Europe, that's where it's slightly different. And I agree. I think Euclair, he's never really looked as good as he did through that brief spell, and since injuries and stuff seem to have kind of taken a toll. Injuries is a great segue onto
Also,
Anderlecht.
no, I
Oh,
want to pitch in one
ruining my
other thing,
segue.
of course. Sorry, yes, love to break your rhythm there, to your mojo, but yeah, no, it might also depend for Club Brugge if they manage to go through in Europe. Whether that's of course something that could swing both ways as well. But towards the end of the season, uh, it often tends to feel like it goes well, since most likely it will get tough, and then you might get a punch maybe. Um, yeah, the downs the morale, but it could also be uplifting. Of course, that's something that can go both ways. But anyway, it would be, yeah, okay. They have a good lot of squad depth, but they might have to really use it more than and see what the effects of that are.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Although to them be fair, they did make the Conference League semi-finals last season and still gone to win a league. So, like you said, it can kind of work both ways. Anderlecht will have to deal with some European football. I'm going to take another segue out of that one. They'll have to deal with some European football because they've been pretty good in the Europa League, and I think you also go back to you to discuss them as well in a minute. But I think for me, looking at them, their whole season and the way it's gone is just so like defined by this terrible summer transfer window. I think we can be really honest about it. It was an absolute kind of car crash of a summer window because it was so slow, and all the news that's come out was like everything was so delayed and stuff, and it felt like the directionless from the outside, and it looked pretty directionless kind of from some of the signings that they made, like Zanka, like he might be off to LA Galaxy already. Thomas Focke as well, like barely seen any of him. You forgot he was there until I was looking at the kind of if they needed a new right back, and I forgot he was there. Den Donk has been okay, but it's kind of I think the hype around him and Dennis Pryor, and we'll get to Pryor again in a minute. I don't. For some reason, I just think they're the same person because they just seem to be quite hyped up. But then my experience of them is just quite average. So I've never really kind of got the hype over these two guys. But yeah, where do you stand on kind of Anderlecht season? It's been a weird one. There's been some real like success and highs, and under Hubert it seemed to be going well, but then they've lost these last two, and that Dender loss recently is a bit of like oh hang on, like what's going on here? Is there something happening? But we have to kind of caveat it with the injuries have been pretty bad, but then the players that they've got injured are old, so some of them.
Yeah, exactly. That you have to caveat the caveats, but yeah, that's indeed a topic. Maybe I guess it's a good thing for them that these last two games that they lost it. It's maybe a good timing for them to have that. So the issues that were there, that if they were not clear yet, they are even clearer now. Yeah, so they might do something about it in January. I could see them having a relatively busy transfer window as well, partially because of a not so great window last summer, and some more windows of before, like still some players that might just that you want to get out, that are now just carrying some wage that and not proving their worth on it. But yeah, it's it's a really weird season. I guess somehow are, I would say, in the positioning they're overperforming at the moment. For also the level of play they had. Yes, they had a better spell in the Roubaix. It actually went well for a while. There is a caveat of like maybe the opponents in general during that spell were not the best ones either. And then were good for confidence boost for certain players like Dolberg. And then, yeah, okay, we all know how important confidence is, and they could carry on that a while. But it's still, as you could see in these last two games, very fragile. Against Genk, they were not great. Against Denver, they were just awful. They deservedly lost against Denver at home. I don't think that's a sentence that many Denver fans ever would have expected themselves, even. So not taking anything away from Denver, but we'll get to that later. But I see a lot of business going there. Which one specifically? I guess their midfield is way too light at the moment. Anyway, yes, you might expect the Donker maybe to be more like the heavyweight in that lighter midfield, but that he's one, he hasn't been featuring that much there, and two, he hasn't been performing really well there. And three, his lack of pace is really showing, unfortunately, as well. That has to do with the second point as well. Of course, the performances being not super great either, so not overwhelming. Big question mark for me. Maybe that's not necessarily a point for now yet, but if they actually will trigger that purchase option that they have on him, that I don't at the moment. I would say would not be able that they should not do that because he didn't show enough for what his what his wages are and then when his transfer costs. Even though, we'll see. That we can only judge that at the end of the season. Of course, he hadn't played for a while before, of course, so maybe he really needs some rhythm. But by now the performances should be becoming better, and that's not really happening. But okay, that's enough about one player. I see more. Well, there are quite some rumors indeed. Sanka going out, maybe Vasquez might be out permanently or on loan as well. So, and then what will I do as a second striker option? A lot of question marks, few injuries, few young talents that maybe can help him overcome. Tristan de Greve, I guess we should mention him as well, at least as a good point for a highlight for them this season, but he doesn't have the volume yet, so they are really managing his load and maybe a bit too much at the moment. Even Struikens had good spells as well, but all in all, it's all, like I said in the beginning, I guess too fragile still, and let's see if that will change.
Yeah, fragile is a very good word, I think, to describe Anderlecht, and also to say that they are probably overperforming a little bit. I would completely agree with that. I think it's ultimately the defence in the midfield that needs the most surgery. Curiously enough, obviously they've got the joint best defence, so in a way it sounds kind of curious saying that you feel the defence needs work, but that's because despite it being the joint best, it's never been massively convincing all season, bizarrely as well. I expect at least one new defender to come in. I mean, it looks like Zanka is gone. That looks like it's very close now. And what a bizarre bookmark chapter in his footballing career. And, I was thinking about him today, funnily enough. And he's a good example of a player in the kind of... It wasn't for very long, I promise. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those bizarre examples of a player in the twilight of his career who comes to a league with a big club with big expectations and discovers that maybe the physical side of the game, quite frankly, he's not up to it. anymore. We know how physical this league is, and the demands, I think, are extremely underrated by lots of people, including people who work in it a lot as well. And I think that's kind of Zanka's fallen foul, I think, of arguably just not being up to the standards required of performing at this level anymore, in this league particularly as well. That's not to say he's a bad player. I mean, he's certainly past his best, but it looks like he's going to a league where the demands are very, very different. And I think that has a lot to do with it. Finding the right league for where you are in your career is very important, and it doesn't look like that's happened in this case. So yeah, I think one new defender, I think at least will come in, possibly more than that, and it looks like we've got a Mexican winger coming in the next few days as well. That is reportedly very close. Some paperwork apparently is slowing that down, so there's something mysterious going on there. So that may yet fall foul by the time you hear this episode. But yes, some of the official sources are saying that it is, nothing to see here, no problem. So he comes with a bit of a pedigree, not somebody I know much about, but they think he can add a bit of quality and depth and consistency, I suppose, to the squad. It'd be interesting to see. I mean, if they can maintain anything like the output that they have going into the second half of the season, because again, after a slow start for them, really. They've managed to kind of hang on the coattails of everybody in a way, without impressing anybody, which I thought was a positive, considering nobody was particularly performing that well. Colin Koosmans, of course, has been, one of the kind of unsung heroes of the season, which nobody saw coming. Fantastic mentality. I think that's a mentality thing, and it's obviously important to have players like that in the dressing room, especially when Anderlecht want to win things and get back to winning things. And I get a feeling watching him, another body language reference, that he's a player who does a lot to try and motivate some of the players in this squad as well. So he's actually becoming increasingly important to them, bizarrely.
On that transfer rumor, that's difficult to see. Huerta might be coming in, might not be. Just the funniest, most ridiculous, hilarious. I don't know. One of them, scratch what doesn't fit, but articles has been written about him in the last couple of days, where they were just really comparing his stats in FIFA, which is, by the way, of course, not called FIFA anymore, but in the article it switched as well. So that was one part of the article that was weird. But since when are we using FIFA references in actual articles for an actual player? Even if you want to take a game, which I already would not recommend, but if you take a football game, you don't take FIFA either, I think. So, just want to highlight the ridiculousness of that article and that journalist, which I will not disclose his name to, at least, but the Flemish listeners will know, I think.
I saw that one as well, and the funniest thing about that is we'll get to this man in a bit probably, but Sinan Bola is still rated like a 69 on that game, and that's one of the highest Westerlo players ratings. So they clearly aren't doing their research. Let's be clear. Let's go to Antwerp. You mentioned Koosman, Scott, and we got a shout out to Lammens as well. He saved 2 of the 3 penalties he's faced this year. He's been comfortably slotted in, with Bute obviously off to, looks like Lons is where he's going to go, but he's going somewhere. If it's not Lons, Como are interested, so he is more than likely off. But apart from that, it's been a transitional season. The veteran signings have been pretty good. Sharon Cherry's been pretty good for a 36-year-old. Dennis Adoy's been pretty good when he's played as well. Vincent Janssen's 7 goals, 6 assists. Can't really complain. Him, Ondrejka, Cherry, they've linked up really, really well. Sure of their season so far has just been kind of beating the bad teams, losing to the good teams, although they've kind of struggled a little bit in recent weeks. And I think, Scott, I don't know if you think this as well, but I think the break came at a great time for Antwerp to kind of just slow things down, reassess, get back on the training pitch, and then if they can sell Bute, sell maybe someone else as well they're looking to offload, they can probably reinvest that in a couple of areas that they need to strengthen, left back especially, because it looks like Ayrton Costa wants to leave already, so they could really do with someone in that position.
Yeah, I mean, Jonas de Rock, just before the break, actually, his message, I saw that the club released a nice little bit of his dressing room address, after the last game before the break there, where he said, "Look, go away, have a rest for a few days, because when we come back, games are going to come thick and fast." So I think there was a sense that they were running out a little bit of steam. They'd lost ground a little bit in recent weeks, which they'd managed to make up a little bit more of, because of some results kind of going their way from their perspective before the break. But yeah, I think freshening up, I think, is what they need more than anything else. Another club who are performing reasonably well. I mean, I was quite worried about them kind of coming into the season. I wasn't really sure what to expect. I thought this could really go any one of a number of ways. There's quite a nice balance actually between experience and youth in this squad now. We know they're pivoting big time to try to develop more talent, and accrue all of the value that goes with that. So that change of model that they've switched to is the right one. And at the moment, the balance is actually quite good on the whole, I think. And they don't seem to be struggling with that adjustment. Thankfully, that's partly because some of the experienced players are performing reasonably well, which helps out some of the young guys. But it's really good to see some of these young players playing regularly now for Antwerp. And this is the early days of a club that are going to be looking to play 4 or 5 younger players every week if possible, and the balance seems good in terms of what they need. I think up front, they definitely need a bit more depth. I mean, they're still quite reliant on Vincent Janssen, obviously, who hasn't been as good as he has been, although he is still contributing. Funnily enough, Gerano Kerk, a player who felt like a bit of a bit part player, to be honest. He was there as obviously cover for Janssen. In the last couple of weeks, he's actually been quite good. Probably is some of his best performances in Antwerp shirt, full stop, have been over the last 2 or 3 weeks. So he's something's changed there. He's obviously feeling quite good about himself. He was particularly good against Genk, I thought. Getting into some great positions. Great game that weekend. So it'll be interesting to see if he can maintain that, because he hasn't shown any indications of being that player at all. But I think they need more in that offensive sense, particularly in the striking position. I think out wide as well, there are some question marks there about. I mean, obviously, big players, big names. Michel Onge-Balat-Wisha picked up a slight injury just a few weeks after coming back from being out for a long time. Will he feature at all in the second half of the season? He might even go out in this window. That's all a bit up in the air. Ondrejka, where is he at the moment? He was a player who's performing quite well for a while and seems to have fallen off a little bit as well. But all things considered, they're looking not bad at all, actually. And I think Antwerp fans have lots of reasons to feel positive, I would say, about the second half of the season, because they're going to be part of the conversation, even though I don't really expect them to push too hard ultimately for a title challenge.
Yeah, indeed. I think they're on a good trajectory, indeed. Did not expect them. Ultimately now 4th position, more or less. That's maybe not so bad. That's it's an okay position. Also, of course, we'll have to see. Differences are still not super high. Starting from Antwerp, maybe starting from Anderlecht actually, until 6th, and then from there on, we'll see if someone can still squeeze in. On Ondrejka as well, I was surprised. He actually featured in all games so far still, but in the last couple of weeks a bit less and only from the bench. But he also has quite decent statistics, but that's also like 1 hat-trick and then 6 games in a row where he contributed once on a different timeline, but 6 games in a row where he contributed at least 1 goal or 1 assist. And then that was it, which is still a very good record. But unfortunately for them, that's now that period has been 2 months, and since then it's only been 1 assist against Kortrijk, and that's it. So he needs to be a bit more consistent, I suppose. And I agree they're overly reliant on Janssen as well. Still, you could really see it when he was not there, which has been the case a few times. and he generally is performing well, but indeed not consistently that good either. So yeah, that causes them to not be even higher up. Yeah, and but I did not expect them this high up anyway. I suppose. Yeah, that's the gamble with the old guys and like the rebuilding seems to work out. So I guess the biggest thing, kudos, I guess I can give is R2 to R2 the Rook, who was yeah. No, not sure if it's still overperforming, but at least doing really well with that squad, which lacks a lot of depth actually in general. Maybe that like the first starting 11, if everyone is fit, is really good for Belgian standards. But once something happens with one of those, the replacement is sometimes naturally, because of that happens when you give younger guys a chance. Not always of the same level, and not consistently as either.
Yeah, no, that's completely understandable. And nice little segue here. Their first game back will be against Antwerp. Will be against Union. Sorry, not Antwerp. They're playing themselves. Yeah, they host Union, and Union are the team just behind them. Another one, Yosh, who had a slow start to the season, but they've really started to pick up some momentum and really started to potentially do a Club Brugge. I don't know. Maybe that's what they're aiming for. Realizing that you don't need to win the regular season, you actually need to win the playoffs. But kudos to Pocagnoli, kudos to Franjo Ivanovic and the lads there, because in Europe and domestic, they've really got on a bit of a tear in recent weeks.
Yep, they have not been overachieving at all. Even they should have been higher up, even I believe. But in the beginning of the season, need a slow start. But I would say they are the third horse potentially in the title race, even if there are still teams between them and it's not a hot take either between them and third spots or between the first two spots. Their distance, well, they probably won't cover that in the league phase anymore, but due to the playoff system, they definitely, indeed, can maybe come back from a lost position lost position from behind at least, and try to leapfrog some sides and maybe eventually get a title. Stranger things have happened, but it's not the most likely scenario either, of course. But maybe it would be good for them that there's a little bit less pressure on them. Good that they held on to Pocagnoli after all, it seems, because at some point his future already looked, like it would be difficult to keep him at the club. But defensively, they're still doing quite okay, or quite strong. Then offensively, now finally the output is not always, but more often showing and coming from the likes of Ivanovic, as you mentioned, as well, and then promise as well. So good job, and let's see what the second half of the season brings, which will most likely, I guess, to our expectations, be without Lapoussin as well, of course, where the good streak started. How many? I think they're now on a quite long. Maybe Scott has the stats or not. I'm sorry if I put you in that position, but how long their unbeaten streak is at the moment, but like a very long one at least. So that will be interesting to see if they can hold on to that in that first game against Antwerp. That might be a good one already to see a first good test for that streak again as well.
I do, in fact, have those stats available to hand, actually. I literally turned the page and there they were. Undefeated since end of October, 13 games now. So it seems to be kind of finally kind of clicking for them. A couple of things on Union really worth highlighting are, I'm pleased they stuck with Pocagnoli as well. Massive change over the summer there. And the question marks were going to be, is it going to be a seamless change? Like it's been in recent years, particularly when there's more change this season. And they've had a few bumps along the road in this first part of the season, but they've stuck with it, and I think are getting their rewards for that now. Sometimes a coach, particularly when there's a lot of turnover, needs as many as 15 or 20 games before he gets to know a squad and before they get to know the coach. And it looks like that's now starting to happen for them. Be interesting to see what happens in the second half of the season with them them, a lot of these players are now starting to contribute in a way that, you know, they hoped that they would, particularly Ivanovic, who, you know, from the first moment we saw him, we thought there could be something there, and he's definitely enjoying himself at the moment. Quite a good balance in this side on the whole, I think, as well. So I wouldn't expect too much change there at the moment now either, particularly when there was so much change in the summer.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's kind of similar to what I think with this next team, apart from like one position, but they're kind of the opposite, I feel, of them. With Ghent, that Franken, like Pocognoli, was under pressure, is under pressure after they stupidly lost to Lana and a couple of other results. And like, I look at this squad and I'm like, they just need to play better, man. Like, just perform better. Biggest problem, Max Dean out for a long time, because Johnson doesn't really look good enough yet, so he's going to have to really step up if anything's going to happen. Gandelman's been linked with a move to Italy, although the kind of rumours I saw about it looked pretty tenuous. It was more just kind of, he's probably one of a number of players being looked at by lots of different clubs, so whether that will actually happen. But yeah, apart from that, I think, or Scott, sorry, back to you for this one. For Ghent, it's just sort of just seems they just need to perform. Like, they need to kind of get over their inconsistency and just start performing, because they had the money in the summer. They spent on some players. They should have been able to put together a team that can challenge for the title, and they haven't, on performance-wise, they haven't done that. And you look at it on paper and you think that doesn't actually look like a team because of the performances that will challenge for the title, even though they should be doing that after what they did in January last year in order to do this. So, yeah, a disappointing season, but I think I wrote an article about them today, and I just put deja vu for Ghent, because it's the same. It feels like it's the same every year, the same conversation around this time of the year.
Yeah, the Buffaloes are still the most consistently inconsistent side, and frustratingly so. And it's just kind of not happening for them. I mean, they're struggling to win back-to-back games kind of domestically at the moment, and have been all season as well. And that kind of tells you almost everything you need to know. I think some of these players haven't perhaps had the right attitude. There's been, lots of kind of coded conversation, I think, in the media around players' attitudes and clashes of personality, and just, lots of things that are generally just very disruptive to a coach. Franken's under quite a lot of pressure now. I think he will get longer. I think he will get time, but I think the pressure he's under is inevitable. When, as Ben says, that there is a decent amount of quality in this squad. Losing Max Dean is a big loss, because I don't think anybody expected him to be the main offensive contributor. We all thought that was probably going to be Good Johnson, but it's funny the way things work out. Anyway, they've lost Max Dean now. Not going to see him until next season. But when you look overall at who's still there are some big players there who could be contributing a lot. Sonko, Gandelman, who on the whole hasn't been too bad actually. A player that none of us expected that much from, is one of the ones who's actually produced something over the course of the season in a way. Leonardo Lopez has come in. Obviously, he's a very good player. We know a lot about him. We've seen a lot of him before. I think he will start to contribute meaningfully in the coming weeks, because he's exactly the sort of player I think they kind of need. It's a good pickup for them. But you've got other curious ones in there, like, nobody wants to talk about Jalan Vangsa, really talented young player, not even getting a look in. I mean, 2 appearances and only one of those was a start. Just seems a bit odd to me. So yeah, there's so many question marks around Ghent, and yeah, they just need to do better. I think they do need to think about bringing a striker in now. For obvious reasons. I think that's probably, I'd be surprised if they didn't, under the circumstances. But yeah, they just ultimately need to perform better. Another one who might be going out as well is goalkeeper Daniel Schmidt. He may very well be on his way back to Japan, if a lot of reports are being believed as well. So we'll see how it goes. But I think unless there's an upturn in their form, I think Vranken probably won't see the season out.
And that's not even a big hot take either. But definitely unlike at Genk, he didn't have a kickstart clearly at Gent. I agree. The striking position indeed needs to be addressed. Especially with Dean out, even if he would not have been out, arguably maybe. But also in midfield, it's feeling like Kums is having the year too many. Like you would say, the years are wearing ultimately, and I fear this is really the year it's really showing. So that they, and also they seem a bit light in midfield. Lorge is a good midfielder, of course, and there are a few good players in there as well, but something is not clicking anyway. There, and at the wingers as well, actually, like still like okay, the last few months maybe last month, both Surde and Sonko have at least are showing in the score sheets a few times, but they're still their performances are not completely convincing all the time either. And some other players like Archie Brown, like he can be really good at one day, but there was a consistency issue again. Like he can be the worst player on the pitch the week after, or on the cold rainy night. But I don't know if it was raining actually, but okay, in Lauren, that does not help, of course. That's the funny thing for them is, well, they really have to pick up their form really early in the after the break, because I just had a look at the last fixtures of the regular season. The last four are against Genk at away, Club Brugge at home, Antwerp away. Okay, and then the last final one is Gent against Kortrijk at home. Well, we've seen learned, I guess, with the Ostende scenario a few years back that even that might not be the best thing for them to have the last game there. So, but okay, obviously they can pick up points in any of those games, but it's unlikely they will have a really good final sprint of the season with all the games combined. If so, then definitely will have deserved their spot in playoff one. But I would advise them to try to get that spot secured before that. And there's not that much margin towards the bottom either. Interesting statistic or stat, yeah, indeed. Like I guess it is about expected points or expected goals and so on. You could they have the similar one to as Cercle Brugge, who are still in the play downs at the moment. So yeah, of course you would probably even that out for both sides a bit. Then it's not a good sign if you want to rely on that on longer term, of course. So they will really have to do better and fast.
I mean, yeah, they're closer in points to the playdowns than they are to the top of the table. So maybe, yeah, it's pretty rough. And the team just behind them, I had to like double check and like reload my table a couple of times, check multiple other tables because I was like, what are they doing there? How have they got there? It's Charleroi. I didn't know that we seeing Rick DeMille Charleroi in 7th place. I'm hoping one of you. I'm going to go for you, Joris. Unfortunately, you're going to have to answer this question. But how on earth has this happened? Like, where's this come from? How are they 7th? I generally can't get my head around it. And I think it just shows, again, how kind of this year the league is incredibly tight because obviously they're only 6 points off the bottom four, but they're in 7th place. Like, that's how ridiculous it is. But good luck assessing their season because it's just been bizarre.
Well, they won the last two games, I believe, so that's how they got they got in there. Basically, you gave the nice segue to that 4 points difference only. But okay, in Charleroi case, there are some underlying statistics that are placing them more where they are now than they were most of the season so far. Actually, even higher, I believe, so that they would actually be based on the expected statistics in the playoff one. And it's finally showing a bit. Stulic somehow has scored a few goals in the last month. Even like when I believe his last goal, there was a winner against Kortrijk, if I'm not mistaken. It was quite a lucky one, but he had been unlucky before. So like that tide seems to have turned for him. Of course, we'll see how long that lasts. I think still, obviously, as we've been hitting that nail so often, that striking position is still a big question mark. But for now, he seems to have patched it, the position a little bit. His performance had been even okay already before he started scoring a few goals. It's not a big amount yet, but a few at least. And they've gotten some points out of it. Zorgan is having a good season, half of the season as well. Hermans is actually also contributing, even though lately a bit less. But he's carried them, I guess, with his goals in the first few months of the season. And Kone, I think, is still also like a really good replacement for Kofi. Sorry to Ben to remind you of him again. I think I've done it once again already during the season, but I think he deserves a shout as well. And they Usu, the Syrian defender, they gotten on loan, now also has signed his contract. They already they already pulled that option, triggered that option. I mean, for on his loan deal, so he will be staying longer. So they trust him clearly. Okay, and ultimately, I think seventh position or somewhere around the midpoint of the league is a good position. The place they are supposed to be in as well at the moment. As surprising as it may be after most of the season so far in the points haul they had gotten. But now I think they still have a shot at playoff one, but they need to address that striking position still. If not for Stulic, at least for having a decent replacement for him as well.
Well, those back-to-back wins over the festive period were only the second time this season that they've had back-to-back wins. So it's been a similar issue to Ghent in that sense, inconsistent. Something really important in Charleroi, I think, is that they are one of the biggest underperforming sides. If you look at some of the underlying data, and XG, which is never the most reliable data to go to, but if we're basing some XG numbers on the 20 games so far, which is a reasonable sample to take it from, Charleroi are massively underperforming. I mean, they've scored 21, but their expected XG across those 20 games is almost 34. So it's clearly an efficiency issue. I think in terms of what they need, they could probably do with a bit more depth everywhere. So adding a bit of everything into the mix would not be a bad idea, but I don't think that's going to happen because they don't have enough financial wiggle room at the moment. I think Rick DeMille's, all things considered, doing quite a good job there. He was looking a little bit vulnerable for a while, I thought, when it looked like, they were just hitting a brick wall. And I think his message was, look, just keep going, keep going, keep doing what we're doing. And they've done that, and things have turned for them a little bit. The performances have got better, certainly over the last 5 to 10 games, and they're getting more reward for that generally. But yeah, one of the big takeaways is they're underperforming big time. So if they can up their efficiency, and Rick's been talking about that over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I think he feels, as Joris was saying, that playoff one spot is definitely something that isn't too far away in the distance if they can do that. So it'll be interesting to see what they decide to do over the next month.
Yeah, definitely. Another side that are looking for playoff one were Mechelen, and they looked good for it at the end of October, and then since then they've won one game throughout November and December. Lots of injuries though, Scott. So many injuries, and looks like they're hopefully going to bring in one of your boys, one of the Celtic boys. Is potentially looks like he's been given the kind of the all clear to go ahead and come in on loan, so that could be a massive boost. But yeah, Besik Harty's not really minced his words, has he? He wants reinforcements because, as he kind of alluded to, he's like, the blokes you signed in the summer are always crocked, and once again they're crocked. So what do you expect me to do with players? Now, what's the point of signing players that are just going to get injured all the time? And you can see why he's frustrated, because that was one of the reasons he left in the first place and then came back. But they performed well despite the injuries. But yeah, recent weeks not been great. They're going to have to hope they get the Hazy second half of the season that they had last year if they really want to push for that top 6.
Yeah, well, it's only one win in 8 for them now. in the league, which clearly isn't good enough. And we were talking about a side who've just been noticeably underperforming. Here's a side who arguably have been overperforming, all things considered. They've had periods this season where they've actually looked pretty decent, and then periods where you feel, and they're going through one at the moment, a big period of just, struggling to kill games for a whole host of reasons. And it's leading to them kind of dropping a lot of points that probably they shouldn't really be dropping. I think Besnik Kazi's hoping for a fair bit of movement. He's been quite honest about that. As you were saying, Ben, he doesn't tend to mince his words. And there's a bit of deja vu here. We feel a little bit like we did towards the end of last season, where, as you were alluding to, the reasons he chose to leave were as much about the fact I don't think he had confidence necessarily in the direction the club was going in with some of its squad choices and what it could be this season. And we're seeing a bit of a recurrence in that here. I think some bad choices over the summer. They didn't necessarily seem bad at the time. A lot of them kind of made sense in a way. A lot of things just haven't worked out as well. I think in terms of their general recruitment, they have to get better and smarter at it, because they are working with a very small budget, as we know, one of the smallest budgets in the league. So I think you have to get so much smarter about how you operate. And I feel this is an area of the club's operations that's been letting them down for a while. It's not been strong enough. There are players in there who have been very good, who I think might not be there for that much longer. Whether they go this window or in the summer is we'll have to wait and see. But they feel slightly vulnerable without getting a bit more depth in there. It looks like Stephen Welsh is coming in. That seems to have been sanctioned at the Glasgow end of things. So we'll see what happens. I think Hazi's made it very clear what he wants, but he's also been honest enough to say to the media, we'll see how many come in. So if he gets what he wants, we'll see, but that's all very much up in the air. I think this window will have a big say on whether they can realistically push for a playoff one position. For a while, it looked like it was very achievable for them, but I think without getting a bit more quality and depth and addressing the issues that he's been very honest about, then it's going to be playoff 2 for them again, which I selfishly, of course, personally don't want to see, because I think the potential's there.
Well, there are two certainties in this league. Gent will finish at the first spot below the playoff spots, and Mechelen will never get to playoff one, Champions playoffs. I hope that's for Scott and others that's not the case, but it seems to be something that's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Hopefully, yes, Scott is typing one day. Yeah, hopefully that day will come sooner rather than later, for sure. But weird season so far for them. Not the best of stars and a good spell. Then, now they really have fallen off a cliff in the last few months, and that's definitely something they need to address. Most likely start both in the striking positions and in at the back. They could use some reinforcements. They have the second worst defense in the top half of the division. Yes, Genk has the worst one, so that's addressing to get to that point once again as well. That's maybe something for later as well, to have some look at some weird stats. But that's definitely something to address. One game is really everything. One game they score a lot of goals, efficiency is there, and then the 5 next games, well, that's been the case recently. They just don't score at all, or not enough according to their expected goals. Yeah, and that brings you to more or less the the middle of the table. Ultimately, nothing is lost, of course, but as Scott mentioned, the good thing is Gent is so far still in the playoff spot, so there is one for taking. But will it go to Mechelen? That's the question then, of course. And I'm not jinxing anything at all here, of course, for no sides. But that's that's well, remains to be seen what will come out of everything. But Mechelen definitely are having an okay season, but they will have wished for more at this stage of season, at earlier, few months ago, they will have wished to be in a better position at the moment. And let's see if they can turn it around again.
Yeah, no, you guys definitely summed it up pretty well. Interesting to see kind of what happens to them in January. Speaking of underachieving, overachieving, Dender are definitely overachieving. I don't think we can deny that. They're overachieving on XG, they're overachieving just in their general play. Joris said what some of their goals you were talking, they looked a bit like prime Barcelona at times. They go from prime Barcelona to that Derby team that were relegated from the Premier League very quickly. There's kind of not much in between with these guys, but they're entertaining. Everyone's done a good job. He's getting the best out of some players that arguably this could be the best they're going to have it. If you know what I mean. This could really make them. They could get some big moves out of this. And how many times we see it where players really overperform at these sort of clubs and then they can never really replicate it at another one. It's just in this moment. So it could be kind of career making for some of these guys. So it's really, really cool to see the likes of Schädler, Kvet, these sort of guys are doing pretty well. Kvet seems to score all the lovely goals as well. And Schädler scored a couple of good ones as well. But Joris Dender, I mean, what can we say apart from it's all positive, surely, because we expect them to be in the bottom four.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, they've got 7 wins already. Who would have thought that across the whole season? And they're probably 2 wins away from safety as well. Anyway, if not immediate safety, but I would see, given how the season is going, most likely even immediate safety. If not, then well, they should be out of reach for anyone else in that bottom 4 battle, if they would get there. But that it's looking like up than down for them at the moment. And again, they won. They had a good streak in December. Now they won 3 out of their 4 games in December, and you see what that brings you. Luckily they had a cushion in the beginning of the season, but so that they never really fell down into this play down spots. And maybe that held the pressure away a little bit as well. When they had a worse spell, which they clearly had as well, they were still like in an okay position. Nobody expected anything from them, but their recruitment has been good as well. Like in that striking force is really good for being like newly promoted sides in comparison to other sides in the second half of the table, and maybe more even other sides in general. They have quite some depth in their striking department with Kvet, with Scheidler, with Nsimba, Berthe even, and Coladio even, or Soladio, I forgot his name now, once again, but he was also not even that bad in that put it mild, too mild, it's too bad. Like he was also looking okay. Yeah, they're still, that is just really good. And then their defense has been leaking at times, but they've also through their playing style, I guess that's something we can give Evraar kudos to, is that the organization at times has really been good as well to compensate for maybe in quality, not necessarily the best defense. And also, okay, they still have one of the worst defenses around that area of the classification, but nonetheless, they're just doing really well. And can only say congratulations. Will they aim for higher? Probably. Well, aim, yes, but should they really invest for that? I guess not. I guess it's more like seize the day and happy days for the fans and for them at the moment. And and looking like very much like there will be another season next season with them in the first division. Whether that's sustainable or not, that's maybe one thing I would try to do if I would be one of the board there. If possible, one of the low knees like that are performing well, like be able try to convince them to stay longer beyond the season, or maybe you can sell them, but then at least you get something for it financially to maybe actually build something sustainable, because that's of course a question mark so far as well. Will they be a one season wonder or not? And wonder, the season is not over yet, obviously, but I think no matter what happens now, it's already a lot better than anyone literally would have expected us before the season.
Yeah, I think that's the big takeaway with Dender, isn't it? That they've exceeded everybody's expectations, including ours. So whatever happens now, I'd be very surprised if they didn't stay in the division for another season. I think the heavy lifting is kind of been done in the first part of the season. It would take something, an incredible collapse, which is possible. Let's just put that out there. This is the Pro League after all, but I think they're going to be all right. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you guys. I think the recruitment has generally been excellent. For a club that have the smallest budget, we know they need to beg, borrow, and steal to make their deals happen, and that will continue to be the case for a while yet. But yeah, I mean, really impressive, particularly against Anderlecht last out. They were just they were outstanding. I didn't see that game live. Was able to go back and watch it afterwards. Really, really good, particularly in the second half, where they really sensed Anderlecht were actually there for the taking, and really, really stepped up. Really, really impressive. And if they can take that confidence into playing big boys in the second half of the season, they may do some more damage to bigger sides. But yeah, A+ for them as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, A++, triple star, anything, all the stars, all the pluses for them, definitely. They're one of the more entertaining sides. Let's go to one of the most boring sides in the Pro League. Standard Liège, oh, what a snooze fest. 12 goals in 20 games. And somehow they have one of the best defensive in the league, despite not really playing like one of the best defenses in the league. Haven't won since the end of November, I think it is. I mean, myself included, some of us, I could have seen them getting relegated at the beginning of the season when I looked at that squad. I was like, that squad doesn't look good enough. And Leco's found a way, I guess, hasn't he, Scott, to make it work, and it goes against everything within his like footballing philosophy to do it. But he's managing to do it. But they're only 4 points off that bottom four, but then also only 6 points off. 5 points off the top six, so it's kind of like they can go either way. And I don't think they'll go down because I think they've got enough somehow defensively to stay in the division, and Sakiri is eking out goals. The man scored half their goals, and that's with just 6. But they're a dull watch at the moment, aren't they? Because there's just no goals in those games.
Yeah, it's been a pretty joyless experience watching them for a long time. It really has, and just when you think it might be starting to get just a tiny bit better, it seems to get so much worse kind of quickly. We know there's no money to play with there, and the Fergal Harkin, who must be working extraordinarily hard in the background there. I've talked about his hands being tied, his hands and his feet probably in this case. It must be joyless, for the most part, and they'll have had to be quite creative with their conversations and trying to convince people to come to Sclessin. It looks like they're going to be probably one of the more busy sides in terms of people coming in. We'll see how many of them they do actually get over the line. Having said that, it's one thing making an offer and almost being there. It's another kind of getting it done. And that happened to them in the summer as well. They were in for an awful lot of players who never arrived in the end. And I think it'll be the same this month, which is, of course, a notoriously more difficult window for a whole host of reasons. I think they could probably do with strengthening everywhere. I mean, Leco's been very open this week. He said he wants another kind of creative midfielder and another attacker. He didn't specify whether that was a wide man, which I think it probably is, or another striker. They've been in for quite a few creative midfielders covering a number of bases, so we'll see who they can get over the line. But yeah, I mean, it's ultimately just remarkable that they're kind of hanging in there with their head above water at the moment. They seem to get a win when you least expect it, that kind of buys them a little bit of breathing space. Having said that, it's worth, I suppose, reminding everybody that in recent weeks coming up to this little break, they really have been getting sucked into what's going on down at the bottom there. So again, they need a few wins from somewhere, because it could get quite sticky the way things are kind of trundling along. That's perhaps how I would describe it.
Yeah, and that's only talking about the the things on the field as well. Off the field, the licensing is still another topic that's not looking necessarily really well for them. It really still looks on that front as like an accident waiting to happen, which is not helped by what's happening on the field as well, of course, because that does create some value for them. But it looks like most of the value now has already gone elsewhere. Or like, yeah, unfortunately, in case of Bodar, of course, also got contracted an injury at the wrong timing. Maybe they will be able to maybe he will be able to find a new club in January nonetheless. Who knows? That's one. But also in general, the quality, yes, the defense is somehow keeping up. Like, Apollo is having a very strange season, but is doing, I guess, on the whole, okay, but not consistently. But so far, it's definitely not their biggest issue, which does obviously lie up front. Zakiri is performing okay. I mean, yes, you can't say much about him, but he does need someone else as well, ideally, to play off from. And yeah, that limits you, one, in your tactics a little bit in one way, and secondly, unfortunately, there's that ideally that second man would also contribute in that case, and then you have a really good striking duo potentially, and that's so far just not happening. And apart from that, their squad is quite dull, just like their playing levels. I suppose defensively, I'm also very much not very convinced by the playing quality, but maybe much like Dinder, Leko has indeed adapted his tactics a bit to that, so that the lack of individual quality is compensated by by a good organization as a team. That does do just about enough for them at the moment. They probably have enough to stay safe for this season as well, on sportive merits. But yeah, I mean, it seems to be going deeper and deeper, at least in quality levels, regardless of where they eventually will end up this season, in quality levels, in squad depth as well. Like, eventually, it feels like eventually, if it's not on financial merits, that might get get a relegation eventually. It's not. It doesn't look like it's going to be this season, and hopefully for them and maybe for the whole league, because they're just such a big club. In a big fan base, that really, that the league can use. It doesn't happen, but it seems to be more and more miraculous both on and off the pitch. That's still the case. So, well, what they need to do this winter window, depending on what they have, indeed bring quite some players in, and I suppose some creativity as well, for sure, so that complements that defensive organization which seems to be there, with some attacking prowess, apart from Zakiri, who's then the lone wolf at the moment up front.
Yeah, and judging by their summer transfers, like some Badamosi and some of the other guys, I can't see how they're going to do it, to be honest. So there'll be one not to watch for the rest of the season, that's for sure. Leuven just behind them. Obviously, managerial change is the big news for them this season. Oscar Garcia out. Wasn't ever really convinced by him anyway. Where they ended, like the way they literally scraped themselves to safety last season thanks to that very late Nacho and Singy goal. It was that game, I remember, they went to Molenbeek and they were just trying not to lose when they just needed to win to really put some distance. And I was like, nah, not for me. They've gone for Mr. Positivity himself, Chris Coleman. Slight change in fortunes, probably very early days to say that, but it's been a slight improvement now at the bottom four. Obviously, lots of players will return to wherever they joined them from in January, because that's how things work. Bjorn's already gone back to Molenbeek. But Joris, apart from just the same old, like, what? I don't know what you even need to say about them. It's like they need a striker. The problem is this season they haven't had a striker. In January they need to get a striker. Like that. That's literally it. Surely.
Yeah, it's. I was talking about Standard squad being dull. I guess you can say the same about the Leuven squad as well. Not really convinced by anyone, but there are some normally okay players in there. Sometimes hampered by injuries as well, of course, in the case of Martens in particular. But yeah, in general, there's no real star quality creative flashes in there. William Balikwisha has Son at times, and Drie also at times, but the problem with both of them is they are not goal scorers. So even if they do, they indeed need a striker for sure. And apart from that, I mean, they're not a bad squad, but not necessarily a great watch either. Just like Standard. So yeah, striking position, creativity, similar to Standard, I guess, except potentially, even though I think they also have big losses, but at least they've got some financial backing still. Yeah, they do need that defensively. Yeah, also meh, I guess, but it's okay. It's good enough so far, I guess, to not repeat the story of the last 2 or 3 sites that I talked about. It's all quite similar in organizations.
Couple of things on Leuven, I think, from me. I think that one of the big questions is, can Chris Coleman get more out of this squad as it stands in the second half of the season? That's something we don't know the answer to yet. And that's obviously something to watch. And Jorge Kispregi, the technical director at Leuven now, did a great job at Beerschot before he left there. I think was quite shrewd in some of his recruitment there on the whole, albeit, it was a different league at that point. It was about getting promoted, which they were able to do. Can he produce a rabbit or two from his technical director's hat during this window that might make a noticeable difference in the second half of the season? If he isn't, then it will come down to obviously that squad just responding better to Chris Coleman, and that's about body language, and as Ben was saying, the positivity and energy that comes with a coach like Chris Coleman. And I think that's got a lot to do with that appointment actually as well, guys. Going with somebody who's big on those things, so that's the impact you can have on a squad that probably isn't going to change too much before the summer.
Yeah, another interesting to see what they do side. Then we come to Westerlo, who stormed to the top of the league at the beginning of the season with those 3 wins, and now they're back where they were last season almost, it feels like, kind of poor run of form. And I just went and quickly looked at their numbers, and I was like, oh, maybe they're underperforming with XG or something like that. But they're bang on. They are bang on what they should be doing, and that is pretty terrifying. And the biggest problem was Sinan Bolat in goal, obviously. But they've changed that and things haven't improved. So maybe we were all a bit too harsh on Sinan, although I did think he was massively responsible for a lot of those. If they don't sign a goalkeeper in January, Scott, I would question so much about what is going on at that club. Do you know what I mean? I'd be like, why have you not sorted this problem out? Like, go and get one. There's some out there that you could go and grab. Even like a Daniel Schmidt, do you know what I mean? We spoke about him leaving. Again, he'd be an upgrade on what they've got there at the moment. And there's I can think of maybe a couple of others that they could probably have a look at as well. Even in the second tier, there's probably a couple around that would be an upgrade on what they've got. So, yeah, I think they'll do something in January. I can't imagine they'll just sit still because they've got the power to do it. But then you look at some of the players and you're like, oh, some of these guys are actually having really good seasons. So it's quite a strange one for them, and I'm not convinced that they're safe at all or have enough to be safe. I think they've got work to do.
Yeah, I think they're getting sucked right into something. I mean, for a long time they were overperforming a little bit, They went through a period of playing quite well and not getting anything from games, and then there was a small number of games where they got all 3 points when arguably they didn't necessarily deserve it as well. So it has been quite a strange season in a lot of ways, because there's a number of players in there who, over the course of certainly the 20 games so far, have actually played quite well, and been quite impressive. I think their efficiency, one of our favourite things to talk about, one of the most important things to talk about, of course, has been dropping off. And I think that explains a lot of drop points as well, of course. At the end of the day, despite me saying they've played a lot of good football and been very good in big chunks of games, none of that counts for anything if you don't get anything out of a game. So it's crumbs ultimately. I think they probably need 2 or 3 to come in January if possible, just to add a little bit of energy to the squad. I think that's probably something that's missing. Now, Ben's right, they do have money to spend, although they are a club who I think are going to make more and more use of kind of creative loans. They do have a very close ongoing relationship with Tottenham now. Vuskovic doesn't need any more of a mention, but that relationship is kind of even more formal than that now. So keep your eyes peeled, whether it's in January or in the summer, to see whether we see anybody else, possibly from Tottenham's academy or even elsewhere, ending up at Westerlo, because that's a distinct possibility. But yeah, I think signs for Timmy Simons to be a bit concerned, I think, despite so many positives up to this point.
Yeah, I can't not mention Vuskovic here, of course. We cannot go past, even if it was a lot. We're not really discussing last 2 game days, but that goal against Club Brugge, that's probably goal of the season so far, at least. I would not be surprised if it ultimately is as well. And he had a few more as well already as a central defender as well. So yeah, one to watch. Maybe even signing of the season. Maybe I'll already call that one, even though. Yeah, is it loan signing, or I guess it was a weird construction there, anyways. I'm not completely certain is it loan, but that he can only sign for Tottenham, and that formally it might be different still. But anyways, cannot not mention him. But of course, that's a defender then, and then you indeed have other strikers who are also performing quite well or reasonably well, and still they're struggling. Yeah, a lot comes down to Bolat, I fear, as well. And well, not only Bolat and William Fair, but like the goalkeeping position in general. Also, I mean, Van Langendonk is actually doing okay, but I mean, he is just like even older than Bolat's version of him, so you can't as a goalkeeper it's possible, but he's never been like the real first division goalkeeper for a long time at least. So yeah, why would that come at some point? Even though okay, Kozmans is showing you can, and he's not doing bad by any means, but yeah, that's definitely that. They are one of the sides linked to a loan with for Penders as well, so that's. And linked with loans for Sabon, as Scott was mentioning when talking about Club Brugge as well. So yeah, it looks like they're looking at that, at some more loan spells, young Belgian guys potentially. Whether any of those will materialize is, of course, another question. But it looks like they're looking at that. Yeah, but it's still weird seeing them down there somehow. But indeed, underlying stats actually say they should be more or less where they are now. But yeah. I still don't see them having much trouble, but there's always a surprise here or there, and if they will need to keep up the levels as well. They didn't get many points anymore in the last half of this half. Yeah, but I guess they could get some hope out of the part of the performances against Club Brugge. But yeah, ultimately they did not get any points of that. But the football they played was quite well, in particular in the second half. First half, yeah, not so much, which showed their issues as well. Again, at the back, they're still leaking goals, even though they could have gotten more behind as well. But yeah, and at the end of the game, they gave the point away as well with a ridiculous challenge there. That more or less sums it up, maybe as well. Stupid challenge to get a penalty, and then penalty saved, but then the rebound still goes in. That always. There are many metaphors in that game, I guess, for how their season is going. First it started well, and then it still went in. But let's hope for them that it's not leading to even worse things. Although I do think there are at least two sides worse, without naming names even, but sides worse than them to be able to avoid relegation in the end.
Yeah, we're getting closer to those two teams, unless you think the next one is one of them. 2 points below them, behind them, I guess, is Cercle Bruges. Obviously, we spoke a lot about them this season. Great in the Conference League, on a fantastic European campaign. Miron Muzic's obviously gone, Ferdinand Feldhoff has come in. The big question, Joris, is can they survive without Kevin Denke? Who's going to score the goals without Kevin Denke? Where are they going to find a striker who can score the goals that Kevin Denke scored?
And is their defense good enough? That's my question. But that I think that might even be more important. But it looks like the form has turned a bit since the departure of Muslic. Whether that's correlated, maybe. But so far they have done well without him. Maybe it's the change in the end did everyone good. Of course, it remains to be seen if that's just a new manager bounce for Veldhoven or not. But they're gathering some points still in that drop zone. Arguably, they should not be. And then, of course, I do actually think they have, at least in theory, on paper, strikers that should be able to pitch in a few goals. Not in the amounts of Denke, most likely, but that might compensate that and might be good enough for scoring enough in the likes of Olaigbe. Minda is maybe not the exact striker, but he should be able to produce more than he did now, both in terms of stats as in just performances. And so on. Yeah, with them, maybe Europe is a boost. It's also again question mark if that's gonna be something that's gonna lift them up a bit or not. It definitely has given them the whole roller coaster of emotions this season as well, potentially leading towards the sacking of Muslic in the end, or accelerating that. Will they have enough to climb out of the zone? You would think so. Like I mentioned earlier with Gent, they kind of should be in the same area of points, and ultimately there are 3 TV losses behind them now, which is a lot. It might be like it's really, you can't say that at the moment, but between them and Westerlo avoiding that the relegation zone playoff or just staying outside of that, avoiding it or being just in it. I would say whoever of those sides gets that spot most likely is going to be okay, but it's difficult to judge. They're not completely safe at all, for sure. There's some work to do. Maybe still bring a striker in might still be good, but also, like I said, defensively, I think they have some worries. De Lange has been doing well in Warloson's absence now, but is he really the first choice goalkeeper they need? That's yet another question, but we'll see if they will address any of these issues or potential issues.
Well, it's been a decent start for Ferdinand Feldhofer, isn't it? He's undefeated in 5 across all competitions since coming in, which isn't bad. And I agree with you guys. I think recently there have been some signs of some things starting to kind of improve. 4 points out of their last 6. They were really good in the first half against St Truden, couldn't see the game out, not as good in the second half, which led to them coming away with a draw, but they were excellent in the first half, I thought. A lot of pressure on Steven Gura, 19-year-old striker, looks to be coming in from Le Havre. Similar mould to the Denki deal again. Young striker coming in from the lower leagues of French football. But unlike Kevin Denke, who had time, arguably, to adapt, I think the demands on Steven Gura, particularly now that Paris Brunner looks to be out for a reasonable amount of time as well, just adds so much pressure into kind of him having an almost instant impact as well, despite them looking a little bit better in recent weeks. But I do still believe that they are the one side in that bottom 4 at the moment that I still have a good amount of confidence are going to pull through from this.
Yeah, I think, we'll get to those other 3 teams now, actually, and I think that will kind of make up most people's mind that they'll probably agree with you, Scott, when we look at the rest of them. But we talk about goal-scoring problems. Like this next team, St Truden, they don't seem to have the issue with a striker scoring goals. Obviously, Bertuccini's got 11 goals. It's just started terribly, obviously. Like it was just the Tanzio. I almost forgot his name, actually. That was just a bizarre, terrible appointment. The Mazu bounce happened, but then that's 4 games without a win now. They're still right in there, but because if they can keep Bertuccini, Scott, I think that's the main thing, is that if they can keep Bertuccini, they'll have the chance because they can score the goals. And by staying up, I'm not saying they will escape the bottom 4, but I think if they were in that bottom 4, you'd fancy that with him against that Beerschot defence and the potential that Kortrijk defence, that they'll probably be all right. And then their defence against those strike forces of those 2 teams, they'll probably be all right. But there's definitely work to be done. I think some of those summer signings, like I'm still not a fan of Del Pupo. I don't really understand what he brings, and when he started, he hasn't looked good. Brahimi's, I was excited about him initially, but I think he's red cards, far too selfish as well. Both of those players, like the red cards of Del Pupo, more red cards than minutes probably. Brahimi's just far too selfish. You can tell he's got an ego that thinks he's better than the rest of the team. Doesn't pass the ball. They could win so many more games if that man passed the ball. But then they've got some quality players like Ito and players like that in there. So it's kind of underperforming potentially. I don't know. Like we were quite harsh on them at the beginning, but they should be out of the bottom 4. But some things they've just made stupid mistakes, or the Standard Liège game, they shouldn't have lost that and stuff like that. So they're quite a difficult one to kind of, because it's almost like their season, Scott's been kind of in 2 halves already, and we're now going into the third kind of maybe put them into thirds now, or even quarters. Like we're into the third quarter for them, and it's a strange one. They can get out of it, but do you trust them to? And if they sign Lam Kelsey, like how funny is that going to be?
Oh wow! I mean, like when I saw the stories of those links today, my initial reaction was an eye roll. His agent must be on the phone constantly, offering him to players. I mean, how do you overcome all of the issues that come with Didier Lamkelzee? I mean, it's beginning to look like or it's suggested in the mainstream media that Belgium's the only country that might even listen to offers for him. It seems inevitable that he's going to come back at some point, which just kind of seems bizarre. Maybe Belgium's surreal enough to be the only country that might even entertain that as a notion. We'll see if it comes to pass. I think St Truden will be in even bigger trouble if they allow a character like that to come into the camp, to be honest. Mazu, as we know, is big on creating a really strong team dynamic, and bringing in a player like Didier Lamkelzee can do nothing but disrupt that, I think. So I think that would be a really bad idea for them. I understand why they're in a bit of a quandary, because he does offer offensively something that arguably they're missing. Speaking of offensive things, I don't think they can afford to lose Bertuccini either to another club, regardless of how big a fee, or to injury before the end of the season, because nobody else is scoring enough goals or anything like it at the moment. If anything happened to him, then they're in really big trouble. So that explains why you would at least smartly have a think about whether you were prepared to sign Didier Lamkelzee even on a short-term basis. Defensively, although there's potential in some of the young players there, they're just conceding far too much. In fact, 2 points in the last 18 now. So there's quite a lot of questions around, what's what's led to this slump. A lot of it's to do with efficiency, of course. They have been creating, and actually some of the performances in some of the games that they've lost haven't been that bad. But they're getting into a downward spiral again. That's the main thing. And we know there's not a lot of money there to spend. And again, I suppose, I don't know how you feel about this, Shoris, but I think, what happens for them in this window could have quite a big material impact on the second half of the season and the outcome in terms of their bigger picture.
Yeah, well, I'm not sure if there's not that much money to spend because they lost a lot of in the summer, of course. Some of them for cheaper than they would have wanted, but nonetheless, they got some money. I'm also not sure if I agree with bringing Lamkaze in on the basis of for the group cohesion, like Ben already mentioned, Brahimi is on a lower level, but also kind of a character. Bertaccini actually as well in his critique against his own teammates in interviews after the game. As long as he performs and he's the only one scoring, that's gonna go well. And I don't know. I think he's probably. I mean, in a group itself, it might be okay, but if that ever stops, then that could change quickly as well. I think that's maybe even the issue that he had before Mazu. I've seen to add it as well. So there are that thing. Of course, you should not get Lamkose in, but you would not wish that to your worst enemy. But well, we kind of do wish that as well. But yeah, the main thing for them as well is they need to hang in. Their last 3 games are basically a play down as well. They are against Kortrijk, Beerschot, and Leuven. So before that, of course, they will need to stay in that race to get out of those playoffs. And even if not, they do have an extra play down. Before the play down, if it would already be lost, that this could be crucial weeks for all of those sides involved there, obviously. But yeah, we're still a far cry from that. So we'll see. When we get to that, when that's how the situation is. But clearly, they do need a lot of quality everywhere. A second striking option that is decent and doesn't only get red cards would be good. Ferrari, I mean, he's shown a little bit more, few glimpses, but very few, unfortunately. And then we'll see. It's surprising that despite the long run that they had with Mazu, that they're still in the beginning, that where they did not lose, that they still ended up here. With this 2 points out of the last 6 league games as well, of course. That's going to be interesting to follow. They both need a good start here, I guess, as well because of this streak. And on the other hand, the highest point of weight, I guess, lies at the back end of the season for them. How will they juggle all that? They do need a few more options in every line. I guess Kokubu has been looking okay most of the time. He's not a big problem, I guess, as a goalkeeper. Goalkeepers in the bottom in all sides, I don't think it's necessarily the biggest issue, which sometimes can be the case, but here it doesn't seem to be on an individual level. But apart from that, they do need more. A bigger defense, a better defense, a few more good defenders, and some creativity as well outside of Brahimi. And then ideally need someone who also passes the ball, like Ben mentioned, as that would help. To be honest, they've been quite good against. If they would play every game like they're playing against Genk, then maybe they will be fine as well. Because in those games, they both looked. In both those games, they looked at least okay to really, really good actually in the second game as well. So maybe they should approach each game, I guess, like they're playing against Genk, which coincidentally is their first game after the break, but in the cup this time. So that might be lifting them up for the whole rest of the campaign as well. But they on the longer run, they do need some reinforcements everywhere.
Yeah, no, they could definitely do with a couple more points. They're only a point ahead of the next side called Trike, who another snooze fest side, I guess we could say, aren't they? Like, they're right up there with Standard EA's 17 goals this season in their 20 matches. Frey Alexanderson obviously gone. I joked about it last time, but Eva's actually back, which is just... I don't know what you can really say about that, can you? Like, I can't believe they actually did it. I can't believe they went back to him after all this time. And I feel like you guys have hinted at it, that you both see this team as a side that's going down. And yeah, I can't see what they're going to be able to do in this window that will turn it around unless they buy a lot of players and a lot of better players in pretty much every position. Like they could easily just sweep that team aside and bring in loads of other players. Kadri being injured, I haven't seen how long that's going to be for. But we'll kind of keep an eye on that, because that's a huge one, because he's the little bit of that spark, that little bit of sparking quality they have. And yeah, it's just been a poor season, hasn't it, Joris? So there's no kind of two ways about it. And it feels like this is it. Like, finally they're going to get caught up in a proper relegation, because it feels like they've been teetering with it for so long, and it's about time that it kind of finally happened.
Yeah, it does look like it. For me, it's still between them and Sint-Truiden, like it also is in the classification. But for that second relegation spot, spoiler alert as well, but I won't name which spoiler it is yet. That that Kadri injury is adding insult to injury as well on a bad season already. First 3 games they looked exciting, more exciting, and looked okay, but apart from that, then it just has not been enough. They do need quality up front, more quality than Ferry Wolf. I mean, in stats he's still doing okay-ish, but not enough in general, and just need an extra option, which is different than him as well. And in the other sides of the pitch as well. I mean, like I said, goalkeeping maybe not the biggest issue, but not a complete problem solving either. But can't put it all in the hands of one man, or already 2 men in their case even, but or 3 if I'm not mistaken. I'm thinking about it. Pirar didn't feature yet, I believe, but I'm losing myself in a tangent here. But that's just, they do indeed need quality everywhere. They're looking bad. They're just looking bad most of the time. Sometimes, like much like Standard, sometimes against the bigger sides it works out for them. Also in the past seasons already. So some similarities there with Standard, but with even less quality. And now with a new old manager who doesn't seem to be too inspiring so far as well in his interviews, I find. There's, after 2 games he's had, which were an away game against Beerschot, which, I mean, is this one you should win, but they actually got lucky that they got away with a point there. Things could have been even worse, let's put it that way. And that and then a loss again as well, against Charleroi. Yeah, it's just not enough so far.
Yeah, bringing Ivad de Heiga back for his third spell as T1, I think, just tells you everything you need to know about the club at the moment. Kortrijk and Cardiff obviously have a relationship because of who owns both clubs, and both clubs, operationally speaking, are in all sorts of trouble. No money's been spent really on anything at all. Not anything meaningful anyway, in terms of smart acquisitions or anything, and there's certainly no sense that Kortrijk are going to be able to bring in anybody that can make a material difference in any area on the pitch. So it's a long, hard dogfight for them, and I think probably the best case scenario is much like last season, is coming through the relegation playoff at the last gasp. That would be the aim. But I think bringing back Van der Heiga, I know we didn't have a chance to speak about that before, but I think that's going to come back to haunt them. Because it's a literal backward step on a number of levels. It's a change. If you're going to make a change, you have to have a plan, and it doesn't look like there is a plan either. Big trouble, and I just don't see where the next win's coming from, to be honest.
They're going to win that game against Stanley Liège now, aren't they, just to spite us? But yeah, no, completely agree with everything you guys said. Before we finish, let's quickly touch on Beerschot, who I think we all presume are down. Although, to be fair, I think in recent months, they've actually played a lot better. They've kind of worked out a system of playing that's just been a little bit more effective. I think you've got to give a shout out to Nick Shinton. I think he's had a fantastic season. I think he has to be back next season in the Pro League. Someone's got to sign him. Westerlo, I'm looking at you. If you don't make a signing in January, just bring this man in because he's been fantastic. Verlinden's starting to play a little bit better. Obviously, Sahafi's playing pretty well, and El Hamdi as well, and a couple of other guys. They're playing fine, but defensively they're not very good. They haven't had the backing or anything like that. So, Scott, I don't know what you want to say about them apart from it's kind of like it was kind of destined to fail from the beginning, sort of thing. And Dirk Kuyt, I think he can kind of hold his head up high. Like I think he's done the best of what he can. I don't know who'd come in and do a better job with what they've got, unless you got like a very top tier manager to get this side playing some better football. But again, I don't think it's something that you're going to then look back and be like, Dirk Kuyt deserves another job in the Pro League either. You're just kind of like, yes, it is what it is. He's done all right with what they've got, but the quality's not there, and it's kind of obvious that it wasn't there from the beginning.
Yeah, that's the fundamental problem. There's not enough quality or depth, arguably even more importantly, anywhere in that squad. So they need, additions everywhere if possible. And much like Kortrijk, of course, who are in just as much trouble as they are, really, they have the operational chaos is very much apparent at the club as well. You have a board of directors of about 4 people at the moment, which is ludicrous. You have a board that are kind of at each other's throats on a number of issues. You have owners who don't seem to really know what they're doing. You have fans who are hoping that the fact that Sheffield United have now been sold means that more money's coming Beerschot way. Dream on. That's my response to that. That's just not going to happen. So yeah, it's the perfect recipe for going straight back down to the CPL, to be honest. I don't expect much movement. I think they will try and bring in a few. And I think they'll try and concentrate on offensive areas, which is probably the smart decision if you're going to do anything, because I'm not sure there's much you can do defensively to help that team at the moment in any way at all. But yeah, the squad is just really imbalanced for me. And there's not much surgery you could perform there at all, actually, through the course of this month that's going to make that much of a material difference, really.
You should also look at their fixture list. The next 7 games are against the top 7, so that's interesting. In the cup against Anderlecht, arguably, so they already had them twice. But then it's in order. The derby against Antwerp as the first game, against Club Brugge, against Union, against Genk. Then you have a breather with Charleroi, and then it's Gent. Yeah, okay, so that also more or less is an alternative explanation of why in recent weeks it has at least looked like they are looking better. They just also played against arguably not the best sides in the league either. And well, like we said before, these are games in the past few weeks that have been games that they should have won, that they did not get the 3 points out of if they would want to have a chance. But I'm expecting them to, after those games, next 7 games. I'm not expecting them to get nothing out of them, but I don't expect them to get enough out of it to be able to still rescue themselves. Okay. Mathematically, with the play downs, probably still possible, but I doubt that they will be in any position that they will be being able to rescue themselves. So not sure if they should do much in that sense. Maybe it's not worth it and better to focus on next year already and then try to build, maybe in that sense, try to build for second division team again, that they can do well there. Maybe actually lose some players even in that case already now, so to lose some wages and try some things maybe for next season already. Whether or not with Dirk, that might depend also on his wages, as well, rumor has it, at least a strong rumor has it. So it looks like a hopeless case. So I'm not going to spend more words on it at the moment.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think sensible decision is to just shop for next season, shop for the second tier, and if you stay up, what you're going to do, I don't know. Kind of a chaos moment, but you then could go back into the second tier with a slightly better team. I think it was Burnley did that a couple of years ago in the Premier League. They knew they were going to go down, built for the second tier and came straight back up, and then they were a consistent Premier League team for many, many years after that. So it's a sensible thing to do. But sensible and Beerscott in the same sentence, probably not the right thing to do.
I have to adjust it. In the next 9 games they play against the top 9. That's even the current top 9, of course. By that time, things will have changed. But just they also play against Nender and Mechelen after those first games already mentioned. Even to make matters even worse.
I'm sure they're relishing it. That pretty much does it for this mid-season review. Congrats if you've managed to stay the whole way through in one sitting. I'm sure people can probably split it down into a couple. We always love sitting down and doing these kind of slightly longer ones where we talk through all the sides and kind of get some things off our chest about certain teams and stuff. And we'll see what happens. Obviously, transfer windows opens on the 7th. We've got the cup games coming up first. Then we're back into league action. Full steam ahead till the middle of March when the playoffs will begin. Guys, as always, it's been a pleasure. It's been good to start 2025 as we mean to go on.
It has, and I'm sure plenty of people will violently disagree with some of our mid-season assessments. That's what we're here for. But yeah, as Ben was saying, we've got Croquet Cup quarterfinals coming up in the next few days before the Pro League even comes back. The same weekend of the 10th and 11th, CPL will be back that weekend as well. They've all disappeared, some of them to sunnier climes. To have some fun that I'm not having, because I can tell you it's not very sunny where I am right now.
I'm gonna ask you guys still. I'll take over the role of host for 2 seconds. Who is going down and who will become champion? Assessments in the mid-season. I'll give mine as well afterwards, of course.
Well,
I think club will win the league, and Beerscott and Kortrijk going down. It's a bit of a boring take, but then I'm like, I think whoever finishes third bottom will stay up. If whoever finishes it, I think the CPL playoffs are too brutal. Teams just come up absolutely battered from that, and they don't really have a chance. But yeah, that's my 2 cents. Scott, hopefully you're going to bring some excitement to this rather than my little boring take.
I actually agree with you on who's going to win the league, and I agree with you on who's going to go down, and have done for quite a while. What I'm not so sure about is, and I think it very much depends on who the CPL opposition is. For the third bottom side, because although most of the time you would think that the Pro League side is the favourite, I think this season it will depend on who that opponent is, because I think the sides that are very vulnerable to finishing in that third bottom spot could find a real fight on their hands, because I think the standard and quality in the CPL has gone up a little bit this year as well, in terms of the sides who are going to finish in those spots. So I think that relegation playoff match could be tighter than ever before as well. But yeah, sorry not to be more controversial. We'll leave that to Joris.
I should have said mine first to spice it up and to annoy you guys a bit with my choices. But yeah, I do think I agree with Club Brugge champion, Beerschot down. Yeah, okay, that's not a big hot take. But I do think both Kortrijk and Sint-Truiden are going down as well, regardless of in which way. That's That's up to I'll leave that in the middle, but yeah, to at least adds a little bit of spice.
I'm sure the listeners will be like, it's classic Limburg rivalry chat there. Coming for the Binkies boys. But yeah, great way to end this episode. If you've enjoyed it, please leave us a review on your podcast app of choice. If you've really, really enjoyed it, you can also donate to us at buymeacoffee.com, which you can find on all of our socials as well. But yeah, Happy New Year once again to everyone. I hope you've enjoyed the start of 2025, and we'll speak to you again very soon on another episode of the Belgian Football Podcast.